So much has happened recently for UCLA. Where have I been? Basketball recruit, football recruit, softball. Oh, my goodness. Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to Locked On UCLA. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for making this your first listening to every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast. It's available on YouTube, and you can download it on any of your favorite audio podcast listening platforms. This episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. When you enter the promo code LockedOnCollege, they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. And if you're wondering why I've been kind of MIA, I'll tell you at the end of the episode. So if you stick through and you really care, and if you actually do want to know, I'll tell you at the end of the episode. In the meantime, there's been so much that's happened since I last dropped an episode. We are getting right to it. UCLA Basketball. So what's going on with the Bruins? Because Mick Cronin has some spots to fill. Mac Etienne, he transferred out. You had Abramo Zanka. One of the more recent episodes that I posted, he decided to go to Wake Forest. So after it's all said and done, UCLA is still waiting on whether it's Adele Bona, Jalen Clark, one if not two of them coming back. But the Bruins, kind of out of nowhere, while I've been perusing Bruin Report online and trying to decipher, all right, what's going on? They've been teasing the Bruins this year specifically, 2023 and beyond, are looking at international recruits. Well, who do they get? Jan Vide, who comes over from Slovenia. As Ben Bolch writes it in the LA Times, a distinctly European flavor is what this UCLA roster will have. And technically, if everybody comes back, they might have 5 European players. If you include Stefanovic, if you include Dembona, despite him coming from a prep school before going to UCLA. The Bruins will have at least a super heavy freshman roster, I believe up to 5 players. So very young. And then you're expecting Dylan Andrews, Will McClendon, potentially a Bona if he comes back. A lot of underclassmen coming in. If you don't even include Lazar Stefanovic, a newcomer. And I mentioned the 5 European players. That is if and when UCLA does sign officially bringing over Ade Mara, which could be any day now, but nothing's happened just as of yet. What a complete shift for Mick Cronin and UCLA, right? This doesn't even seem like UCLA of old. It went from, as I talked about in the summer of 2022 after the relaunching of this podcast, that, hey, UCLA can go get a Brandon Williams. They'll pluck somebody out of someone's own backyard. Like they took Williams out of, New York, took him out of St. John's hands when he had St. John's in his Final 3 along UCLA and whatever other school. Devin Williams is one that had a Final 2 between UCLA and SC. It was, the Bruins kept picking their pick, getting whoever they wanted. And then all of a sudden, this super big class of players just leaves. Of course, that's with the COVID year, NBA draft, Amari Bailey, and everything in between. Yet here UCLA is having to completely retool a roster that I'm not entirely sure what the competition looks like. I did not think UCLA would be going after 3 international players that all coming in would be freshmen. So who is Jan Vide? And if you've spent some days since the announcement, no official thing. It was just reported by Jonathan Givney since the recording of this podcast. That's all I've seen. And then other websites from all fan side of the Bruins page. They've all talked about Jan Vide. So according to official transcripts, I'm not sure if anything's official, but he has committed to UCLA according to sources at the recording of this podcast. From what I was watching, NBA Draft Junkies YouTube channel, very good, for my opinion, I like what the guy had to say, talked about how Jan Vide had a very impressive summer last year in 2022. In his words, just shy of that of Victor Wembanyama, like best recruit, best player in the world. I can't even say his name. As you know, the upcoming number 1 pick in the NBA draft that will be coming a San Antonio Spur. But they were saying Vide was one of the best European players. I know I keep coming up here in hyping up the different European basketball players that UCLA seemingly goes overseas and has this guy that was first Ilan Fibleul coming in a 6'6 guard, Jan Vide 6'5", 6'6", and all those things. And then we're expecting a 7'3 Spanish player in the likes of Ade Amara to come in. All guys that could very much be key guys in the 2024 NBA draft, depending on how well they play with UCLA in the upcoming season. But considering the 6'6 Vide, he was the most valuable player in the Adidas Next Generation tournament in the EuroLeague Finals. It's a lot of words. He played for Real Madrid's under-18 team. Yes, there are more than one Real Madrid. It's not just the soccer and all that. They have basketball teams. You know, they might see a Barcelona basketball team. It goes just beyond the soccer pitch. So when he was playing in regular season games with his club team, with his team, he was averaging 20 points per game. Over that, over 5.5 rebounds per game, over 3.5 assists per game, and nearly 2 steals per game. Those are scoring numbers that could replace the likes of, as Ben Bolch puts it, a Amari Bailey, you know, when it comes to big numbers. He could be a backup to Dylan Andrews, and a fifth member of this freshman class. He's got those numbers when it comes to swiping the basketball, similar to a Jaime Jaquez Jr., who was also equally good defensively. So while I was writing different things down from Slovenia, fifth freshman, and his comparison to some, Luka Doncic, Goran Dragic, hybrid between the two. I'm not sure what that type of player would look like in terms of the lefty Dragic, who's been a wily veteran, stayed around the league for a very long time. He's been very good for over a decade in the NBA. And then you got Luka, who speaks for himself. Well, at least 8 newcomers coming in for UCLA. I'm not entirely sure. I keep going back and forth. All right, this team might be good. And then they just do, I'm not going to say puzzling, but there's just no way to know and fully, truly grasp how good this Bruins team will be. If Mick Cronin stacks up the early portion of the schedule, I hate to say it to you folks, but the Bruins aren't going to be very good next year in terms of an overall record if their non-conference is tough and if the Pac-12 is better top to bottom in basketball. If it's a little more parity, as we've seen during Pac-12 games, well, that could be troubling for UCLA hoops. It won't be like this year where we all expected them to be in the Final Four and were devastated when the injuries crushed UCLA's chances to even advance beyond the Sweet 16. Next year, they could be playing with house money. We all expect good things, and Mick Cronin, if he's going after all these recruits, we will expect, right? You've got another Ivo Simovic overseas recruit, which is what he was brought in to do. International recruiting has been significantly bolstered, as Ben Bolch would put it, right? Bolstered, yeah, joke, no. Just think of all the guys they brought in. I know Zonka didn't pan out and Demir didn't pan out, but we hope these next couple of guys are a springboard. This doesn't feel like UCLA basketball recruiting when you go from in your backyard, get the best LA recruits, go get a Ron Holland. And instead, you know, because he was available and decommitted, and all these guys, and even Caleb Love and all those things didn't decommitted for different reasons. And you would think UCLA could go get these top guys in the portal or after guys have decommitted for various reasons. And yet UCLA says, Mick Cronin, we're going to go pick our point. We're going to go pick our players from wherever. And now UCLA is hopping across the pond, quote unquote, in finding those players. Vide is getting a lot of hype, a lot of love. And we expect and hope good things for the Bruins and Vide, the Slovenian player, to go along with the, I believe, French Fibleul, and potentially, as we wait for it, Ade Mara, the 7'3 Spanish product, as we do await for the decisions that are coming up very soon from Jalen Clark and Adem Bona. Those are all looming for UCLA hoops. That is the latest, and we'll see if anything changes coming up for UCLA basketball. I sit here telling you all this good UCLA or intriguing UCLA basketball news, but I'm telling you, you got to join the revolution. You just have to, because Birddogs is fantastic. If you're sitting there at home wondering what Birddogs is, no, it's not a food or some joke. Birddogs are the most comfortable shorts I have ever worn. I think the last 3 times I've done an episode, I've been wearing Birddogs shorts. You can get pants, get inseams, all these things. They've got stretchy fabrics, where you're going to wear these and feel so comfortable. We've been talking as a Locked On group. We have all the College Channel shows in our group chat. I'm telling you, this is one of the only products where everybody, we got test pairs, they love it. All these other companies, we love them too, but Birddogs, the shorts, it's getting hot. You're going to be in humid heat. If you're in LA, if you're just going to sweat it out, you need Birddog shorts. You look good. My legs have never looked better, and I haven't worked out in 3 months. I'm telling you, you're going to want to put on these shorts and absolutely love them. Whether it's sitting outside, running, going on a date, whatever it may be, you're going to put on these shorts and love them spectacularly. Stretchy fabric, they're comfortable, you feel great, freedom for everything. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, and when you enter the promo code LockedOnCollege, they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Cruising on into segment 2 of Locked On UCLA. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer here with you guys. We're going to touch on UCLA football briefly because they've got some big news. They've got a recruit coming in, the number 8 overall player coming in this season in the 2024 recruiting class, a 5-star defensive edge. You've got the number 8 overall player, depending on what composites you use or overall rankings. And you've got Elijah Rushing. Remember the name. This is a guy who, from reading the 24/7 sports articles, is a 5-star product coming from Tucson, Arizona, will have an official visit. And from what I've been reading, according to Blair Angelo, I hope I don't butcher that name, but I did, Rushing scheduled UCLA to be an official visit, which is, generally not meaningful, even though the official visits have changed a little bit in certain things. But he wasn't even they weren't on each other's radar necessarily. And not only are they on each other's radar, a top-ranked defensive player. Remember, UCLA is trying to overhaul these defensive players. While they got the Murphy twins and they got a lot too from the portal, they're not going to be Bruins forever because the draft is coming and they'll eventually run out of COVID eligibility. For Rushing, the Bruins weren't necessarily in the running, and all of a sudden, they have a real chance to make a push because they went from no official visit to becoming his first official visit over the Memorial Day weekend. Intriguing, huh? So the Bruins can all of a sudden get a guy who, according to this Blair Angelo evaluation, long, high upside frame with plus wingspan. That's important. Tall in stature, major physical potential to add mass, explosive edge rusher with impressive mobility. There's a lot more, but at the end of it, I'm going to skim through a lot of those words. Potential multi-year starter at elite Power 5 level and projects as a day 1 NFL draft selection. And even beyond Dante Moore, UCLA's best or second best recruit was a defensive edge, right? I believe it was Jalen Phillips, or, he can go over stars and all those things. But UCLA can get a game-changing defensive lineman heading into the Big Ten. That would be huge if they can get Elijah Rushing. Remember the name? I know we had Dante to LA. Try and tweet at him. See, hey, this is why you got to love LA, Pasadena, Westwood. Come be a Bruin. But in terms of guys who have already committed to be a UCLA Bruin, Chip Kelly have got another class of 24 offensive commit. You've got Marquise Thorpe Taylor, who committed to UCLA, a Pacific Northwest player, the third tackle during the class of 24 recruiting cycle to choose UCLA. He did this over the weekend a few days ago, around May 20th, 21st, as he is considered one of the top West Coast linemen to come to on this coast, to come to UCLA. Class of 24, 6'6", 315 pounds. Someone who has been one of the hotter names on the offensive line market. All I know is when I hear 6'6", 315 pounds, offensive lineman for UCLA who is going to become a Big Ten school, I just think good things, and that's all I want, right? I just want big, beefy offensive linemen who are going to outwork the competition and give UCLA the size. Maybe they won't start right away, but become an immediate player in the Big Ten just from the size up front. How many times in college football do you sit there and you see defensive linemen, like an Elijah Rushing, come in and just maul these offensive linemen and someone can't run the ball or they can't even protect their quarterback? Georgia just been out-muscling teams these last 2 years as they won national championships. And the Bruins have to get up to par when it comes to strength on a week-in, week-out basis. Because even though they might joke about the Iowa offense, that defense is for real, right? From last year, going back, going forward, and looking all these things, the Bruins have to be strong up front offensively, strong in the front seven to compete beyond just the Dante Moore. That's just the first piece. Now you've got to protect this guy with someone who's 6'6", 315 pounds. He was this Thorpe Taylor product, hosted by Oregon, USC, and Washington, all hosted Thorpe Taylor. But the final trip was an official to UCLA in mid-May, and he eventually came in a steady left tackle. Did play defense, does play defense in high school. 3-star recruit, the number 10 overall player in Washington, and the Bruins are only beefing up in size when it comes to their offensive linemen. So just check it out. The Bruins hosting someone defensively and getting also another offensive lineman. Cruising on into segment 3 of Locked On UCLA, we're talking UCLA softball because what a downer it was. What an absolute downer. I was wholeheartedly expecting. I believe one of the episodes, I tried my best to warn you guys, all right, this is a sneaky tough regional. The Bruins struggled to beat these teams in the regular season. Not Grand Canyon, but a San Diego State or a Liberty who were in their regional, and they played them early in the season. And while I did say Grand Canyon's got a lot of wins and everything in between, the Bruins fell significantly short of expectations. This is probably one of those days, if you see Kelly Inouye Perez, it probably stings a lot longer, might sting longer because you've got the seniors. You had Maya Brady. You've got some of the best players in the country mixed with the most talented freshman class, or one of the most talented freshman classes you could have, a team that had Ferramo, you have Yanez, all these stud pitchers. And despite only giving 6 hits up in 2 games worth in a regional hosted at Easton Stadium, they gave up a combined 5 runs in 2 games, and UCLA couldn't win it. You lost 3-2 to Grand Canyon and to Liberty on the next day, 2-1, where they gave up a late run in the top of the 7th to Grand Canyon. They gave up 3 runs in the 4th. Ferramo took the loss once, and then Brooke Yanez took the loss on May 20th to lose it. For the Bruins, who were 52-4, lost their last 3 games, cruising through the Pac-12 tournament, beating all these supposed great teams in the conference, not mowing, but scrapping by in the Pac-12 tournament, then losing to Utah in the Pac-12 tournament title game. And for some reason, that team that had won nearly upwards of 25, I forget how many games it got in a row, found themselves in a crushing defeat. So looking at the Grand Canyon box score, what's the difference? They lost 3-2. They out-hit them 7-3. And yet it was one big home run from GCU, from Schaefer, who hit a 3-run blast, and that ended up being the difference. Maya Brady going 0-for-4. You had Savannah Pola. Again, Alyssa Garcia had to play catcher. They were without Charlize Palacios, who has been out for a little bit for UCLA, right? Missing that back end of the schedule. And, at some point, your players just have to play well in the postseason, and the Bruins did not, which was scary because they had a lot of close games early against those mid-major programs. And while we were hoping, and it didn't look like they would be this vulnerable coming in May in the regional rounds, unfortunately, sometimes, especially in softball, a team can get cold at the wrong time. It could be a bad 3 days. I'm not entirely sure. But all these close games, right? They beat San Diego 5-2. They beat San Diego State on a walk-off home run. It took a close win against Liberty, who eventually beat them at the end. All those close games, as you can see, Oklahoma has been wiping the floor with just about everybody. So one wonders, was it now or later? And unfortunately for UCLA softball, it's now. And you go back to the drawing board. They had all those good transfers, right? They brought from Oregon. They brought pitchers, position players. They were adding depth at key positions. And yet here UCLA is still looking on the outside, watching from home the rest of the softball tournament. I wholeheartedly expected them to get through to the Supers and eventually to the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City to potentially make it interesting against Oklahoma this year. That's not meant to be, and that is nowhere near the case. I wondered why they put all these teams in UCLA's bracket, and in the end, the Bruins, a stunning loss as the number 2 seed, the national seed, who cruised by in conference play. They were 21-3. This UCLA softball team had lost once at home in their first 22 games, and with the season on the line, lost 2 one-run games at home in the NCAA tournament where they had not lost, regardless of how good or bad they were, in over a decade, it seemed like. I forget how long it's been off the top of my head. And it's just unfortunate that Aaliyah Jordan's career has to end this way. As she had come back for the 7th year, played well. Maya Brady, who is absolutely fantastic, who's the redshirt junior from Thousand Oaks. You just feel for the seniors who put their heart on the line. Yeah, Brooke Yana is playing as a 6th-year transfer from Arizona. All these players who fought and clawed their way into the lineup for one way or another, and now it'll be stretching into year 5, 2024, since UCLA last won that national championship in 2019, albeit against Oklahoma. It's bitter pill to swallow, metaphorically speaking. Yet UCLA, just frustrating. Just frustrating that's how it played out. Unfortunately, you give up 6 hits, 5 runs, and you expect to win those games generally in most dominant number 2 seed fashions in run rules. That's generally how it plays out. In the end, we could talk about this. We could talk about it during the offseason. The Bruins season ends heartbreakingly, crushingly short at the hands of Liberty as they lost their last 3 games of the year. It isn't how you start. It's about how you finish. And speaking about how you finish this episode for Locked On UCLA, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast. And stay tuned. UCLA basketball news is coming up. Bona, Clark have to make their decisions, and other players have to decide whether they're staying in the NBA draft or withdrawing their name and coming back to school or doing something completely different. Speaking of doing something completely different, here's the personal update for Locked On UCLA. I am out of town, serving on a mission trips of sorts. So instead of the 5 episodes per day, I'm out of town. I'll be in limited Wi-Fi in certain spots, and I won't be able to upload episodes every day. So going to an off-season style of programming, we'll only have about 3 episodes per day, and I'll do my best to update when there's big news, big player news. But I'm out of town serving the community, and if you really want to know more, I guess you can hit in the comments. I'm not going to really divulge into it, but it is something I'm enjoying doing, getting out of town, having a fun time across the country. And, we'll only have 3 episodes per day, or per week, generally speaking. So bear with me. If you're wondering why haven't we seen him in a while, you'll still see some, a little bit less in the summer. And then the expectation is to ramp back up in August when I'm back home, and then football season and fall camp starts. And we can see who can win that UCLA starting quarterback job. All reasons to stick with Locked On UCLA and get excited for more UCLA content. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fights. This has been Locked On UCLA. Hit in the comments. I missed you guys. Go Bruins.